Peter Coles here with another video again, and today I'm going to answer one of the most common questions I receive from you. Which language should I learn? But before you even start watching this video, I'm going to disappoint you, because I genuinely can't answer this question for everybody. There isn't one specific language that everyone needs to learn, but if I can ask you a set of questions and you think about those, you can probably find an answer. First of all, one of the most common reasons for people to learn a language is because they live in a different country. So me, for example, I moved from the Netherlands to the Czech Republic, and therefore I learned the Czech language. So if you've moved to a certain country, you definitely have to learn that language. And another reason to learn a language is study. So if you're going to study in a certain country, let's say you want to go to university in China, then you definitely need to learn Chinese. Or it could be work. Let's say you have a certain job and that job requires you to learn a certain language. I had a student recently who was from Switzerland who could speak English and German, and he had to learn another Swiss language to get a government contract. So he could either learn French or Italian. And because he didn't like French, he decided to learn Italian. So the choice of language for him was already decided. He couldn't learn Spanish because that wouldn't get him the Swiss government contract. You may also wish to learn a language for business in general. Let's say you're in the manufacturing business and your factory is based in China or Vietnam. Therefore, you should logically learn Chinese or learn Vietnamese. But at the end of the day, the best motivating factor for somebody to learn a language is the passion, the actual love for the language. If you don't have one of the reasons that I mentioned before, then you should simply start with the language you are passionate about. I know we've mentioned Italian before, but I have another student from the UK and she is learning Italian only because she truly loves the language. She has a passion for Italian and she goes to Italy very often. And that is enough reason for her to learn that language. Sure, there might be other languages that would be more useful for her in her daily life or maybe in her business, but she simply truly wants to learn Italian. So at the end of the day, if you cannot decide which language to learn, I suggest you just look into your heart. Think, which language do I really feel passionate about? And it doesn't matter if it's not a global language like French or Spanish or Arabic. It could be a language like Estonian, only spoken by 1 million people, for example. The same situation for Slovene. You might really love the nature in Slovenia. But if you really feel that passion, you truly love that country, that culture, you speak a bit of the language and you love it, just go for it. Because if you speak some of these smaller languages that are not spoken by millions of people, others will actually be more impressed by this. If you can speak a language that are only spoken by a few people, the people who can speak that language will be really impressed by your skill. Another motivating factor for me when it comes to learning languages is the opportunity to speak it. So as you know, I live in the Czech Republic, which is in Central Europe. Which languages do I have more opportunity to speak? I could go and learn more Portuguese right now. I can speak Portuguese, but I want to improve it. But how often am I going to go to Portugal, or more so Brazil, which is probably a 10-hour flight from me? What am I more likely to come across? Well, Poland is only 2 hours away from where I live. And I went to Hungary last weekend because that was only 4 hours away. So I have more opportunities to speak these smaller languages. Even though they're not world languages, I can practice them. So I went to learn Polish and now I've got B2. I'm currently improving my Ukrainian because I'm surrounded by Ukrainians here in Prague. And I'm learning Hungarian because it's really close to the Czech Republic and I can go for the weekend and practice it. So if you don't have a real passion for a language, consider choosing a language which is close to you geographically, because if you have the opportunity to go and visit that country and practice it, you'll be more motivated. Let's say you live in the USA and you can't decide which language to learn, but you decide you're going to learn Spanish. That is a very good choice because you are surrounded by the language. And if you want to go abroad, you can go to Mexico or Latin America very easily. But if you decided I wanted to learn Chinese because I couldn't decide between Spanish and Chinese, and you end up going for Chinese, how much opportunity do you have to speak Chinese? Of course, there are lots of Chinese people living in America, but how often are you going to go to China? Now, if you do go to China, that is fantastic, and that is definitely a language you consider. but definitely focus on the geographic element when it comes to choosing a language. Now that I've given you a basic overview of how you should choose languages, I'm sure what you really want me to tell you is which language you should actually learn. So I will give you a general idea based on some factors which language I think you should learn, but this is just basic advice. Pencil it in, but don't take it for 100%, because there will be factors about you personally that I don't know, that I'm not taking into account. So take this advice with a pinch of salt. But the definite answer is, if you cannot speak high-level English, and I'm talking B2 English, if you don't have this level in English, definitely focus on this language. I mean, if you can't speak English, you're probably having a difficult time understanding me. And that's probably a good judgment. If you're having a difficult time understanding what I'm saying without subtitles, I strongly suggest you go back to learning English. Because without a strong level of English, you're going to have a really difficult time getting far in this world. In the terms of international business, in terms of the media, social media, what I'm doing. If you cannot speak English, you cannot reach a global audience. But assuming you can speak English, I'm going to go through a few countries and why you should learn a certain language if you live there. So let's start with the USA. Assuming you can already speak English living in the USA, and if you can't speak English, why are you even in America? But if you can speak English and you live in the US, I strongly suggest you learn Spanish, because the importance of Spanish is only increasing in the USA. Imagine you're running a business and you're able to do sales calls in both English and Spanish. Imagine you can do your marketing in both English and Spanish. Imagine how many more customers you're going to get. Imagine how much money you're going to make in the US. You will stand out as a native English speaker who can also speak Spanish. But now let's assume that you can already speak English and Spanish and you live in the US. What should you do? Well, in that case, I strongly suggest you learn Portuguese. Now you're thinking, well, Portugal, that's a small country. But the vast majority of Portuguese speakers live in Brazil. And Brazil is one of the biggest countries in the world, and Portuguese is in the top 10 world languages. And if you can already speak Spanish, then Portuguese will be very easy to learn. If you live in Canada and you can only speak English, I strongly suggest you learn French. I know that people from Quebec are not particularly popular in the English-speaking part of Canada, but the ability to be bilingual in Canada is a really strong point. You can get better jobs, you can get government contracts, you can get into politics. I understand that many English speakers in Canada don't want to learn French, but if you just go with it and learn this language, you can get really far. The question for Europeans will be even harder because there are simply so many European languages to learn, and I won't particularly give you the best advice. But one of the most important languages to know in Europe is definitely German. Now, this is not a world language, but in terms of business, in terms of economics, German is really important and it is at the heart of the continent. But if you want to learn a language that is up and coming, I really suggest Polish. Very few people learn Polish right now, but I strongly believe this is the language of the future, and it is not as hard as you think. The Polish economy is growing quickly, and if you can get ahead of the game and speak Polish in the 21st century, you have the chance to make a lot of money. Now, talking about money, we obviously know that Europe is not exactly the future. Things are not going well, especially in Western Europe. In Central and Eastern Europe, we do see some hope and it will hold on for a number of decades to come. But if you want to go somewhere and make a lot of money, I really suggest going to the Gulf states. Now, I don't know what the situation is when you're watching this video, but as I'm filming this, there is currently a war in the Middle East, and we have Iran and the Gulf states fighting. We have Iran firing rockets at the UAE. But tell me in the future how this pans out. But I strongly believe this war is just going to continue like this. A few missiles, very few casualties, very few deaths. It's going to go on for a few months maybe, and then it will end. And as prices drop in places like Qatar and the UAE, this is the time to invest. This is the time to buy property there, to move over. Whilst everyone else is escaping, whilst everyone else is scared and they want to leave, now is the time to invest and go to that country. Now, of course, you can get by very easily in the Gulf states by only speaking English, but you want to get ahead of the average people. So what I suggest you do is learn Gulf Arabic. That is what I'm currently learning. It is called Khaliji, and it is a special dialect of Arabic, but the ones that they speak in countries like the UAE, like Qatar, like Saudi Arabia. And if these countries are the economic future, you want to get ahead of the average people. Those who are running these countries obviously speak Arabic, and they are very closed. People are manual laborers from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the Philippines. You have the expats from Europe, from America, for example, who are often working online and making money and living there because they don't pay income tax. And then you have the people at the top. These are the Arabs. I think it's less than 10% of the population, but these are the people who are truly in control. Now, if you can learn Gulf Arabic and get into their circles, this will be a huge advantage to you, because these are the people who make the decisions. These are the people who have the influence. And for normal people, whether you're a migrant worker or you're just an expat working online, it'll be very hard to infiltrate these circles. But if you can speak the language, you'll really impress them and you'll have the chance to make a serious amount of money. Now, this is a very common one. Men who want to learn a language for dating. Now, I don't know what kind of girl you want to date or what your preference is, but very often it is Eastern European girls. In that case, I strongly suggest you learn Russian. Obviously, Russian is not a major language for the world economy right now, but in terms of dating, it will give you a huge advantage. If you want to date a girl from Eastern Europe, and many of you know already, I have a Ukrainian girlfriend. I met her because I could speak Russian. She couldn't speak English, although she's a Ukrainian speaker. We spoke to each other in Russian and we got a relationship going. Obviously now I'm learning Ukrainian, but we still mostly speak Russian. But if you can learn Russian, you can get an advantage over the average guy. These Eastern European girls often don't want to speak English. They can, but they just prefer not to. That's why they date their own people. But if you as a Westerner who has money and speaks their language, you can get much further than the average person. It doesn't actually have to be Russian. It could be Ukrainian, it could be Polish, Czech, Hungarian, Serbian, Romanian, whatever. But these Eastern European languages are not often learned by Westerners. So by you learning their language and going to that country or meeting them around the world, you're really going to impress them. But obviously not everyone here wants Slavic girls. Maybe you're in the US and you really like Latinas, then obviously Spanish and Portuguese. Maybe you're going to Southeast Asia and you want to learn Thai or Vietnamese or Indonesian because you like those girls. I don't know what your personal preference is. And the next thing I want to talk about is people who are digital nomads. Some people call them passport bros. I really don't like that phrase because it's just people going to work in countries and meeting girls there. They're not specifically going to find girls. That would be weird. But they're just going to live in a country that is cheaper, that taxes them less, that treats them with respect, and the girls are obviously nicer. So if you're going to a country in Southeast Asia, and I'm a huge fan of that region, you can learn a language very easily. Some languages such as Indonesian are actually much easier than you think, much easier than even many European languages, so definitely go for that. And finally, if you're really passionate about East Asian culture, you might really love Chinese culture, or you really love K-pop from Korea, then go for Korean. You might really like anime and manga, you're just passionate about that, go for Japanese. At the end of the day, the simple answer I've got for you is to learn the language that you are passionate about. That's what I started this video with, and that's what I'm going to end it with. Whatever you truly love, whatever part of culture you like, whatever TV shows or music or anything at the end of the day, if you truly love that thing, then go for that language. Because even if it's not seen as useful worldwide, you will have such a passion for it and you will learn it so much quickly. So after that, I hope this video was useful for you. If you have any questions about what I've said, or you want more information from me, or you still can't decide what language to learn, I am always online. You can write to me on Instagram or on TikTok. You can't write on YouTube, unfortunately, but if you write in the comments, I will check often and try to respond to you. But you can always send me a message and I will try my best to respond and help you out finding which language you should learn. And if you want to hear more from me and you want to know my thoughts and opinions, you can always join my Telegram channel. So thank you for watching this video and I'll see you in the next one.